when your own HOA president calls you a disgrace in front of your children at the community potluck. What do? Most would cry. Some might beg. Me? I walked out of that ridiculous harvest festival with my kids clinging to my legs and built something the entire Serenity Pines HOA would never forget. By the next annual meeting, they were the ones knocking on my door, and I didn't even bother answering. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a side of property deeds they'll never touch. My name is Lila Harper, and I should have known better than to show up at that potluck with my homemade pumpkin pie balanced in my hands like some peace offering. The November sun in Willow Creek was still warm enough to make the perfect lawns glow, but the air already carried that crisp edge of judgment. Mom, are we going to see the big turkey again? Emma, 9 years old and sharp as a tack, tugged my sleeve. Noah, 6, just stared at the identical beige houses like they might bite him. Yes, sweetie. I forced a smile, adjusting his little collar. The kids deserved one normal community event, or so I thought. The white gazebo in the Central Park was decked out with fake autumn leaves and family values banners that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Victoria Langford, president of the Serenity Pines, HOA, self-appointed queen of beige everything, stood at the head table like she was accepting an Oscar. Her blazer was starched so stiff it could cut glass, and that fake smile never reached her eyes. I set the pie down. The chatter died. Victoria's gaze slid over me like I was a stain on her perfect clipboard. Lila Harper, she announced, loud enough for the whole block. We weren't expecting you after last quarter's violations. I kept my voice steady. The kids wanted to see the festival. I brought dessert. Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. Dessert? How quaint. But let's be honest. Everyone. She turned to the crowd of perfectly groomed neighbors clutching their wine spritzers. We can't keep pretending. This neighborhood is for stable families, not situations like yours. Dragging those mistakes around after your little divorce drama. It brings down property values. It sets a bad example. The word mistakes landed on my kids like a slap. Emma pressed into my side. Noah's small hand found mine and squeezed. Someone gasped. Someone else actually clapped, probably Karen's best friend, the one who measured grass with a ruler at dawn. Victoria wasn't done. You think a pie erases 3 warning letters for visible toys after 5 p.m.? For that hideous swing set that isn't approved earth tone? For lowering the tone of Serenity Pines? Her voice rose with each petty rule she'd invented. You're a disgrace to everything this community stands for. A walking reminder that some people just don't belong. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked around at the sea of Botox and judgment. The same neighbors who'd smiled at my kids last summer, but now stared like we carried the plague. Victoria's husband shifted uncomfortably, but he said nothing. No one ever did. You know what? I said quietly, voice steady as steel. You're right. I am a disgrace to people who value beige curtains over actual human beings. I picked up Noah, took Emma's hand. We're leaving. Victoria's face flushed the color of cheap rose. Good. And don't come back. You're not welcome at HOA events. Not you. Not those children. Her little echo chamber murmured approval. I turned at the edge of the gazebo. Enjoy the pie. I made it with real sugar, something your rules apparently can't handle. The walk to the car felt endless. Kids silent. My hands shook only when I buckled them in. In the rearview mirror, Emma finally whispered, Why does Mrs. Langford hate us? Mom, I met her eyes. Because some people are terrified of anything that doesn't match their wallpaper. Baby. And sometimes the neighborhood you choose is better than the one you're stuck in. I drove the 3 blocks home in silence, past lawns mowed to military precision and flags that could only fly on approved days. The pie sat forgotten on their table. By the time they noticed, We were already inside our little house, the one they'd been trying to fine into foreclosure. That night, after tucking the kids in with promises that tomorrow would be better, I sat at the kitchen table under the buzzing fluorescent light and let myself remember everything. The divorce had been brutal. My ex left when Noah was 6 months old, citing, "I'm not cut out for this dad thing." The HOA welcomed us with open arms at first, until Victoria decided a single mom with 2 kids was bad for court appeal. The fine started small, $50 for a basketball left in the driveway. Then $200 for holiday lights left up one day past January 5th. Then the anonymous complaints about loud children playing. I was working 2 jobs already, waitressing at the diner on the highway and cleaning offices at night, while studying for my real estate license on bus rides. Every blister on my hands was another brick in the wall I was building between us and their nonsense. Victoria's voice kept echoing, "A disgrace." I opened my laptop, pulled up the HOA bylaws I'd been quietly annotating for months, and smiled for the first time that night. They wanted me gone? Fine. But when I came back, and I would come back, it would be with enough property deeds to rewrite their precious rules in red ink. The next morning, the first violation notice was taped to my door before sunrise. Grass height deviation, 0.3 inches. Victoria's personal signature at the bottom. I crumpled it, laughed once short, sharp, bitter, and got the kids ready for school. The weeks after the potluck blurred into a grind that would have broken anyone softer. Wake at 5:30 a.m. Pack lunches while Victoria's latest fine sat on the counter like a threat. Drop the kids at school. Waitress the breakfast rush. Change in the car. Clean offices until midnight. Collapse. Repeat. My hands cracked from bleach. My back screamed from carrying tubs of dirty dishes. But every ache was distance from her clipboard. On the bus between shifts, I studied real estate law and, more importantly, every loophole in the Serenity Pines HOA covenants. I highlighted the parts about majority property ownership, voting rights, until the pages glowed yellow. Victoria thought she owned the neighborhood. I was about to become the neighborhood. Emma asked one night, while I reviewed flashcards at the kitchen table, "Why are you always reading about houses?" "Mommy, because someday we're going to own so many of them that misses. Langford has to ask us for permission to paint her own mailbox," I told her. She giggled like it was the best joke ever and went back to coloring a house with a rainbow roof. I taped it to the fridge right next to Noah's drawing of our family. Stick figures holding hands in front of a house that looked suspiciously like a fortress. The memories of Victoria's voice still stung in quiet moments. The time she'd shown up at 7 a.m. with a measuring tape because my grass was 0.4 inches too long. The anonymous letter to the school suggesting my kids might be disruptive influences. The pool ban last summer because single mothers sometimes bring drama. Each one was a reminder that in Serenity Pines, perfection wasn't optional. But I wasn't fighting fair anymore. My first sale came 6 months later, a foreclosure 2 streets over caused by, surprise, surprise, unpaid HOA fines. The owner had been fined into bankruptcy after Victoria decided his American flag was too large for patriotic standards. I bought it cheap, fixed it up with YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m., and sold it for $42,000 profit. Commission check in hand. I paid off 3 months of my own fines and bought a bottle of cheap champagne I swore I'd open when the empire was real. It still sits on top of the fridge, collecting dust like a promise. Victoria noticed. Of course she did. The next board meeting, she made a little speech about certain elements undermining community standards through aggressive property acquisition. Everyone knew who she meant. I sat in the back row with my notebook and smiled the whole time. Within a year, I'd flipped 4 more houses. Lion Ridge Realty took me on when no one else would. My broker, Sandra, took one look at my borrowed suit and said, "You've got hungry eyes. That sells houses." She had no idea The hunger was pure spite. I started getting up earlier, staying up later. The kids helped on weekends, Emma painting baseboards, Noah fixing things with his plastic tools. Those nights, covered in primer and laughing until we cried, were worth every fine. One Saturday, Victoria drove by slowly in her golf cart, clipboard out, and actually took a photo of my kids playing in the yard. The violation notice arrived Monday. Unauthorized child labor on premises. I framed it. Neighbors started whispering. Some crossed the street when they saw me. Others quietly slipped me notes. Other victims of Victoria's reign who'd been fined for the wrong shade of mulch or dared to host a birthday party without a $150 permit. I saved everyone. My little black book of HOA horror stories grew thicker than the bylaws. By the second year, I'd save enough for a down payment on a small duplex. I moved us into one side and rented the other to a young single dad who'd been fined out of his last place. Victoria lost her mind at the next meeting. "We are not a halfway house for alternative lifestyles," she sputtered. I stood up calmly. "The covenants say nothing about tenant demographics." "Victoria, check page 47, subsection C." I did. The room went dead silent. For the first time, her smile faltered. That night, Emma asked, "Are we rich now?" "Mom." I hugged her tight. "We're secure. And rich is when you can help other people escape the same trap." I started mentoring other homeowners. Quietly at first, coffee at the diner, showing them how to appeal fines, how to form voting blocks. My little resistance grew. Victoria's fines doubled, then tripled. She started driving past my house at odd hours, pretending to inspect curbs. I waved every time. The champagne bottle watched from the fridge like it knew something I didn't. I was just getting started. Year 3, and I owned 6 rental properties in Serenity Pines. Nothing flashy, just solid middle-class homes that gave steady income and, more importantly, voting power. I hired a property manager, then a handyman on retainer. The kids each had their own room now in the house I'd renovated myself. Noah's video game setup took up half the basement. Emma had a reading nook with fairy lights Victoria would have cited on sight. "Mom, are we winning?" Noah asked one evening, noticing how the other kids at school suddenly wanted to come over. I ruffled his hair. "We're just refusing to lose." "Baby." Victoria's harassment escalated into performance art. She started a neighborhood newsletter, Serenity Pines Standards, featuring not-so-subtle articles about elements eroding our family-first values. Everyone knew the photo of my yard, with one rhododendron, was aimed at me. She even tried to get the pool reopened just so she could ban my kids again for excessive splashing. I countered by buying the foreclosed house directly behind hers, the one she'd personally fined into oblivion after the owner dared to plant tomatoes without board approval. I fixed it up, rented it to a retired couple who hated Victoria as much as I did, and made sure their American flag flew 365 days a year. Legal. Maximum petty. She showed up at my door one Tuesday evening, smile glued on like cheap veneer. "Lila, darling, we need to talk about community harmony." I leaned on the doorframe. "Kids safely inside." "Harmony? Is that what you call the $1,200 in fines you slapped on the Millers last month for having a visible garden gnome?" Her eye twitched. "Rules are rules. Rules you wrote after your cousin lost the last election," I replied sweetly. "Funny how they only seem to apply to people who don't kiss your ring." She left in a huff, but the fines kept coming. I kept buying. By year 4, I controlled 18% of the voting shares in the HOA, enough to block anything she proposed. Enough to make her sweat. Then the magazine happened. Modern Women in Business wanted a cover story on single moms who built empires from spite. The reporter dug deep. I gave her the truth, raw, unfiltered, laced with the exact quotes Victoria had used at that potluck. When the issue hit stands, my phone exploded. Investors, partners, media, and, inevitably, Victoria's desperate circle. Her best friend posted on the neighborhood Facebook group, "So proud of our local success story. Family supports family. Serenity Pine Strong." The same woman who'd voted to fine me for emotional disturbance 2 years earlier. The hypocrisy was almost beautiful. Victoria herself sent a private message through the HOA portal. Perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. Coffee. I left it on read. The real escalation came when the HOA books started showing irregularities. Turns out Victoria had been quietly siphoning funds into her own community beautification slush account, new golf cart, vacation research trips, even a home theater she claimed was for board meetings. A few of my quiet allies on the board leaked documents. The state attorney general's office sniffed around. Suddenly, the queen was bleeding. She showed up at my office, my actual Redline Property Group office, unannounced. Hair not quite perfect for the first time. "Lila, we need to discuss the upcoming assessment. The association is facing challenges." I offered her the cheap chair. "Challenges? You mean the $187,000 you can't account for?" Her face went pale. "That's a misunderstanding. If you could perhaps vote with us on the special assessment. Help the community." I smiled the same smile she'd given me at the potluck. "Community? You mean the one you said I didn't belong in?" She left without another word. But the text started that night. Then the emails. Then her husband showed up at my door, looking 20 years older. The empire was complete. The champagne still waited. And Victoria Langford was finally learning what it felt like to be the one on the outside looking in. The email from Victoria arrived on a random Tuesday while I was closing on a waterfront property 2 towns over. Subject line, "Urgent Community Matter." I almost deleted it. Curiosity 1. "Lila, the association is facing foreclosure on the clubhouse due to unforeseen legal expenses. As a major stakeholder, your support would be appreciated. We can discuss terms." Victoria, appreciated. The woman who once called my children mistakes now wanted my money. The irony tasted better than any pie. My phone rang 10 minutes later. Her husband this time. "Lila, please." She's desperate. The board is turning on her. If the clubhouse goes, her reputation. I let him talk until he ran out of breath. Then I said calmly, "You know what's funny? 3 years ago, she told me my kids lowered property values. Now you want me to save the clubhouse she used to throw parties in on my dime. Tell her to measure that." He hung up. The begging escalated. Anonymous letters slid under my door. "We were wrong. Please help." Victoria herself showed up at my kid's school pickup. Clipboard gone, pride gone, begging in a whisper so the other moms wouldn't hear. "Lila, I'll publicly apologize at the next meeting. I'll drop every penny fine. Just don't let them take my house." The bank is circling. I looked at her, makeup slightly smudged. The invincible queen reduced to trembling. My kids watched from the car. Emma's eyes were wide. Noah looked confused. "You called them mistakes in front of the entire neighborhood," I said quietly. "You tried to find me out of my home. You taught my children that love is conditional on grass length. Now you want mercy." She started to cry. Actual tears. I was wrong. I was afraid of change. Please. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the night Emma asked why everyone hated us. I remembered Noah hiding his bike every evening so he wouldn't get fined. I remember the champagne bottle still waiting for a real victory. "I'll think about it," I lied. "Don't contact me again. If I decide to help, I'll let you know." The hope in her eyes was pathetic. I closed the car door and drove away. That night, I pulled public records. Her house, the McMansion with a 3-car garage and the perfect beige everything, was indeed in foreclosure. Turns out the Community Beautification Fund had been paying her mortgage. The state investigation was closing in. My attorney sent a single email to the entire board. All future communication must go through him. I would not be taking their calls. The kids noticed the sudden quiet. No more golf cart drive-bys. No more midnight notices. Emma asked over dinner. Did Mrs. Langford finally stop being mean? I chose my words carefully. She learned that actions have consequences. Baby, sometimes people only apologize when they need something. It's important to know the difference between real sorry and convenient sorry. Noah nodded solemnly. Like when Tyler only wants to be my friend when I have a new video game. Exactly like that. I opened my laptop and typed instructions to my attorney. If anyone from the Langford family or the HOA board contacts my office regarding financial assistance, inform them that Redline Property Group has no interest in propping up mismanaged associations. Then I checked on the kids. Ava was reading under the covers with a flashlight. Noah had kicked off his blankets again. I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and whispered the words Victoria never could. You are perfect exactly as you are. The champagne bottle caught the moonlight as I passed the kitchen. Still unopened. Still waiting. But tonight, I realized I didn't need their downfall to feel whole. I'd built my empire not to prove Victoria wrong, but to prove myself right. The best revenge wasn't watching her lose her house. It was being in a position to save it, and choosing not to. The invitation to speak at the National Women's Entrepreneurship Summit arrived through my attorney. The same one screening Victoria's increasingly desperate pleas. 400 female business owners looking for inspiration. I accepted on one condition, no sanitized version. They wanted the real story. They get the unfiltered truth. The ballroom glittered. My kids sat in the front row with Sandra, who had become the grandmother they never had from the HOA. I walked to the podium and began. 7 years ago, I stood at the Serenity Pines Harvest Festival holding a pie I could barely afford, and listened to the HOA president call me a disgrace to the entire neighborhood. She pointed at my children, 9 and 6 at the time, and said there were mistakes lowering property values. The crowd murmured approval. In that moment, I decided, if I was going to be a disgrace, I'd be a spectacular one. The room was silent. I told them everything, the double shifts, the midnight study sessions, the first foreclosure flip, the moment I owned enough houses to block Victoria's every move. I told them about the fines for visible happiness, the pool bans, the measuring tape dawn raids. And you know what I learned? I leaned into the microphone. Revenge success only takes you so far. At some point, you stop running from the Victorias of the world and start running toward the life you actually want. Rich isn't the millions in real estate. Rich is your daughter helping her brother with homework without being asked. Rich is Sunday dinners with people who chose you when you had nothing to offer but yourself. I look straight at my kids. If a single mom with 2 children, no support, and an HOA determined to destroy her can build a $62 million portfolio from pure spite, imagine what you can build from wherever you're standing right now. The applause was thunderous. Women stood. Some cried. My daughter rushed the stage and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Noah tried to play it cool, but I saw the tears. Later, driving home under city lights, Emma whispered, I'm proud to be your daughter. I smiled. I'm proud to be your mom. Baby, both of you. The final letter arrived on Christmas Eve, slipped under my door. No postage. Inside was a single photograph of Victoria, her husband, and their perfectly beige life, now crammed into a modest apartment. On the back, shaky handwriting. We're trying to change. Starting over. I stood in my kitchen, the one overlooking the ocean after I finally moved us out of Serenity Pines, watching my kids wrap presents with Sandra. Everything I'd built led to this moment of choice. I wrote one final note. I see your attempt to change. I acknowledge your struggle, but I cannot be part of your redemption story. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward, but can never be rebuilt. I wish you peace in your journey as I have found peace in mine. This is goodbye. I didn't send it. Instead, I walked to the fireplace and watched the photo and the letter turn to ash. They didn't deserve the closure of a response. My silence would be the final statement. Were you burning? Sandra asked sleepily from the couch. The past, I said. Finally and completely. That evening our chosen family gathered, my team, the single parents I'd helped escape their own HOAs. The kids laughing until they cried. Sandra raised her glass. To families we choose and empires we build. Emma added. And to Mom, who showed us that being a disgrace just means you're brave enough to break the rules that never protected you. After everyone left, after the dishes were done and the kids were asleep, I finally pulled the champagne bottle down. 7 years of dust wiped away easily. I poured one glass, stepped onto the balcony, and raised it to the stars. To the night they called us mistakes, I whispered. And to every single day after that when we proved them wrong by simply refusing to disappear. The champagne was perfect cold, crisp, worth every late night and every tear. I didn't drink it to celebrate Victoria's fall. I drank it to celebrate freedom. The freedom to choose mercy without offering access. The freedom to wish her well from a distance while I focused on the family that never once measured my worth in grass height. My phone buzzed with a text from a young single mom I was mentoring. My HOA president called me a failure today. Tomorrow I'm proving her wrong. I typed back, no. Tomorrow you're proving yourself right. There's a difference. I turned off the lights and headed to bed. The past was ash in a fireplace. The future was an empire still expanding. And the present, my kids safe, my business thriving, my soul finally quiet, was perfect in its beautiful imperfection. Some stories end with revenge. Some end with reconciliation. Mine ended with something better, release. The woman who once called me a disgrace would live with her choices. The family I built would live with love. And that distinction made all the difference.